Right. So, going to try to make this quick. I've had a nice chain of nice insights. So it began with this first one, which I think is a really nice one. Um, there's this expression that goes around a lot to explain, as an analogy, what is happening. That all of this material world, all of this phenomena, are waves on the ocean. And what's really important is the ocean, not the waves. The waves come in, they go, they die out, it's all alright. Um, and I think they talk about it a bit too casually. I think it's actually really great to really dig into it and really see how it works, what it entails, because it doesn't match up potentially with how deeply you identify and how deeply you want you feel you want to maintain certain phenomena. There's also self-protection, and if there's something to protect, there's like some sort of phenomena, and it seems a bit callous or just feeling wrong to so quickly just say, oh, it's just a wave. No, this is a very big claim, and you have to look at it further. And I never thought of it as something to contemplate, but I think it works very well. And I think this allowed me to have an insight on another thought, which is something that I've thought before, but I got stuck. So what I would do is, you understand that thoughts are referring to something. And so you just go down the chain. And, perhaps you find that there's all a hall of mirrors. There's not really anything of real substance, or maybe you do find something of substance. In either case, that is great because you've gone to the root of it and you really figured out what is happening. What I would get messed up with is that there was always a point where it pointed to something which seemed a bit beyond, which seemed a bit inaccessible, locked away, and it was like, oh, this is quite good. I don't get any of the resolutions because the resolution is when you come at the end, or when you realize that there's no end and it's all just going to be a bit circular or never ending, but of no substance. But I guess here, with the analogy of the waves and the ocean, and you've got a picture of, being like if you're swimming on the surface, especially in the ocean, very chaotic, lots of stuff happening. But if you sort of drop down, and there's like in scenes where there's a character that is slowly falling down, it is really calm. There's this whole mess, but it is completely peace. The sort of timeless nature is very nice. It's one of my favorite images. Um, and yeah, so from that perspective, doing the exercise of what is this referring to, I had a different sense of what was happening. And it seemed, and it very quickly, just like spontaneously, it was like, oh, this is all just referring back to other references. Like there was obviously nothing very important, very core, very substantial going on. This was pretty surprising, and I don't quite understand how it was able to do that because if I think about it now, it's like not obvious. I can see both sides. I can see the everything's a reference. I can see that maybe it's not is not still totally clear to me. But I had a bit of like, oh, it's all quite light. Still, the waves are pretty important, and I think this is something that I've had for quite a long time. Is that it is not a good strategy to trust other things, or to gamble on something external, because actually just the main source of goodness, it seems, more or less, has been me. Like that has been something that is consistent, that is really the only thing that was reliable. And so there's nowhere to rest a little bit, to give the weight to somebody else, to something else. And it felt like also opening up to just the world, and that felt like too much. And then also there's a sense that letting go of, in some way, something about myself, it wasn't obviously good, because I just said a couple of seconds ago that that was the main thing that I could trust, that was good. And now I'm supposed to let go of that. Hold on. It is not so obvious. Now, but still, I had that moth to the flame effect, or like situation, where I was still, getting closer, feeling more scared, feeling more emotions. And I think I definitely remember having other times where it was very similar to this, but maybe it was further away, or for some other reason it wasn't as spooky or as energetic. Or maybe sometimes it was energetic, but then it fizzled out in one way or another. And yes, it still was spooky, and it didn't feel certain that I wanted to go forward into this. One thing that was helpful was, if this is, what was the word? If this is something that, has to happen, is destined to happen, then, we've got no choice. Then you go right on ahead. That was something I would trust. When something is destined to happen, I like that. In this case, it didn't have that sense. But then I got, and something else was that, I had something to lose. So I had resources, I had a, finite amount of stuff, and, I have to keep good care of it. But I think somewhat with the ocean metaphor and, the going below the surface, very nice feeling, very timeless, very nourishing. And also with memories of others, either the people, animals, or situations, nature, being just overwhelmingly generous in a way that I knew that was not really possible for me. All of this combined is that actually this is good. wait, there was something else. It was more like, okay, what specifically do I actually want to protect? What specifically is actually good? And is that really at risk? And it wasn't. It seemed that that wasn't the case. And another thing was that you do have the resources. It's no issue. And that was quite interesting. I mean, this is maybe not so surprising because I always thought the only reason I feel I have a lack of resources is because I'm still tethered to this finite representation, and that one does have a lack of resources. But it is only grabbing onto it that you inherit that constraint. So, yeah, that was another thing that was helpful. And then this is very important, I guess. And I think the ocean image, again, is one that I like a lot. I'm not quite sure how much of this is useful. Another thing was that, and this is definitely non-obvious, but how much of the good is actually just to be found immediately here. It's right in front of you to be picked up. You're never going, your memory or any of that. It is not the good, it's a representation of it. Where do you actually find the true, pure good? You find it in front of you as you do stuff. It's sort of given as a gift. And it seems like it's actually a consistent gift. Or maybe not. I'll have to see a bit more. Because, I still have the sense, the finite sense, the clinging, and all of that. But there's this nice, at least pocket of some sort of security or, just goodness. That is quite nice. Alright, that's all. Take care.